Okay, I've got to record. So I've done this with a couple of kind of my standard talks. There are a bunch of talks I love to give, and one is about the Garden of Eden. And one of the nice things about doing it in this setting with my Monday or Wednesday regulars is I don't feel compelled to complete the discussion, in one hour session. So we can go, we can have all kinds of discussions and digressions and arguments, and we can continue the discussion next time. In fact, there's an article that I circulated in the email next time. Suzanne, I'm getting feedback from you, so I am going to mute. Oh, it looks like you muted. Right, perfect. So we will definitely continue the discussion of the Garden of Eden next time, either continuing with this article or going to the other article, just depending on how far we get. So I presume you can see the PowerPoint.
Yes.
So when I first gave this talk, I called it "What Really Happened at the Garden of Eden." And actually, I have a book by that title by a Jewish scholar, Zioni Zevit. I'll make a further reference to that later. And my blessed and brilliant wife, Sonia, who is my rabbi, pointed out special sensitivity here to Jim and Christians who would be hearing this discussion, is a Christian understanding of what happened at the Garden of Eden is very different than a Jewish understanding of what happened at the Garden of Eden. And Sonia pointed out that by saying what really happened, I may be sort of imposing my interpretation. So I came up with a new title for this talk, which you see in front of you, which is Revisiting the Garden of Eden with a Jewish Tour Guide. And you may want to take a minute. Clothing is optional except for a fig leaf. But you can use your judgment. And I got some really nice images from the internet. I love scouring the internet for images. So here's Adam and Chava. We'll talk about how she became Eve in a little bit. And the animals, the lion relaxing with the lamb, and nobody is having dinner. So, and I sometimes forget to mention this, but my work is supported by the Jewish Federation of Ventura County. And actually, I'm not sure that they're still using this, a grant from Joel and Barbara Aronson, but certainly they were the ones who made it possible for me to do this kind of work. So,
Rabbi,
yes.
Rabbi, I would like to mention that I am in contact with a lady from the association, and I think every Friday morning they send me a very nice email about when Shabbat comes
Nice.
on time, and all sorts of different happenings in Ventura County. Chimanovsky, or was I don't.
Her name
I
is
don't
Sherry Dukovsky.
Tchaikovsky, yeah.
Yes.
And
yes.
very nice
Yes.
person.
Yes. So back to the subject. So some basic questions before we begin, and I'll just ask them, and and I'll ask you to chime in. So who are the characters in the story? Who are the characters in the Garden of Eden story? You can just unmute and chime in.
Adam, Eve, the serpent, God.
Very good. 4 characters.
Mm-hmm.
Adam, actually in the Hebrew Bible, her name is Chava. As I mentioned, we'll talk about how Chava became Eve, the serpent, and God. Okay, so which ones tell the truth and which ones don't tell the truth? And some of you have heard me talk about this before.
The serpent tells the truth.
Lies.
Okay,
No,
so hold on. So Les, first, what did you say?
Well, the serpent probably is telling the truth, and Eve and Adam lied to God about talking to the serpent.
Okay, and so you and Cheryl agree the serpent tells the truth, Adam lies. Okay, we have 2 other characters. We have Eve or Chava, and we have God. Jim.
Well, I say God tells the truth, but the serpent does not tell the truth. The
Okay,
serpent
so
not
we
not
have-
only lies, but comes close to entrapment.
oh, so this is a really good question. So this is really good. I never thought about it in this exact way before. So the issue is going to be, and I want to welcome Julie, who I met a little while ago from Ojai. So I was asking which tell the truth and which don't. So you say the serpent not only doesn't tell the truth, but might be guilty of entrapment. I like that. Any other thoughts before I chime in on this question?
How can Hava knew that shouldn't take the fruit from the knowledge tree? Because God didn't tell her, just God tell to Adam. So Adam said to Hava, and
Yes.
maybe he didn't say.
Okay, so does everything Chava say is true?
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. That's so what about God? Does God always tell the truth?
Yes,
No.
I would think.
Okay. If you think
Does
God
it-
always tells the truth, raise your hands. Okay. If you think God lies in this story, raise your hands. Cheryl, you said, oh no, you didn't answer that question.
No, I
Okay.
didn't.
Okay, and Suzanne is splitting the difference.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, God says in that day you eat of it, you will die. And they don't die that day.
Okay, and let's see. Setting recent politics aside, would that be considered the truth?
Well, he didn't say you'll die this minute. He said you will die. And
He
ultimately,
said you will die on this very day.
That
He
We'll
did
see
say
day.
you're going to die on
Yeah,
this very
yeah,
day.
we'll see it. But I want to assert a new idea, which I never occurred to me before. I'm going to assert that God is guilty of entrapment as well. Not only don't I say that the serpent is not guilty of entrapment, but I think we can lay a little entrapment on God. And so if you want to leave now, you can. And so the last question I want to ask is, why were Adam and Eve expelled from the garden? And of course, this is all according to the story, the biblical story.
So they couldn't eat the tree of life from the tree
Okay.
of
Any
life.
other? We actually talked about this on Friday. Any other thoughts on why they were expelled from the Garden of Eden?
Because they disobeyed God and ate the apple that God said don't.
Well, it wasn't an apple.
Okay, we're going to get to whether it was an apple or not. But go ahead, Jim.
True.
They chose with their own free will to be the ones to decide what is right and wrong, as opposed to letting God decide that. And as such, the garden was not their place anymore. Their place was out in the real world, where as adults, they chose to be. So that was their own sort of decision.
So why were they expelled? Is it a punishment, would you say?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it was the result of their decision.
Okay, that's an interesting way of nuancing. I like that. Any other thoughts? Okay. So
Well, I don't know how they could know what death is because nothing had died.
yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But if the story was focusing on that question, you would think they might ask, what do you mean by death? So clearly the story's not
Yeah.
focusing on that question, but I absolutely
Yeah.
agree with you.
And Adam and Chava, they both sort of don't take any responsibility. And I've always
Yeah, they
thought
seem
that
to
was-
they seem to blame other
Yeah.
folks. Yes, I agree with that. Okay. And okay, so now we're just going to read some text. I like, I hope you're familiar with the idea that the story of creation is told twice. In the opening chapter of Genesis, I would say it's told as if from space. It says, and God said, let there be light, and God caused this, and God caused that. If somebody was filming it, it would be filmed from a great distance. And in the opening in Genesis 1, the deity is always referred to as God, Elohim. We talked about that a lot. I can't remember if it was last Wednesday or last Monday. And then one of the things I always like to point out is that God speaks things into existence. God could have said, gee, it's really dark, I'm going to make light. But that's not the way the text reads. It said, and God said, V'yomer Elohim yehi or, v'yehi or. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And I always like to look at that as underlining how powerful words are in Judaism. And, you know, the old line, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never harm me. That is not a Jewish take on words. A word, the Hebrew word for word is actually the same as the Hebrew word for thing, devar and devarim. And I think most of us know that with a word, a nice word or a bad word, you can make someone's universe and you can destroy someone's universe.
Devar and what's
Rabbi,
the meaning?
Well, hold on, yeah, Erwin and then Farah.
I would like to know that when creation started, God didn't speak. It was much later, and
But
I
hold on,
wonder.
stop. In the very beginning of creation, God, it said, "V'yomer Elohim yehi or," and God said, "Let there be light." So God speaks. We don't know who God is speaking to. That's an interesting question. But
Yeah,
the text uses the Hebrew word "v'yomer," and God said, "Let there be light."
so how do we know that Adam and Eva understood the
We haven't gotten
language?
there yet. We're in Genesis 1 when no beings exist. God just, the universe is empty and void. It's
Yeah,
the phrase is tohu vavohu.
because I think the writing was before he spoke. He
So yeah,
created the he
so
created the
stop.
Torah.
Erwin, let's just not go there. We're on the first day of creation. The entire universe is tohu vavohu, empty, mishmash, void. I often think the Hebrew word tohu, instead of struggling with what it means, it actually means tofu, because the entire universe was as though it's filled with tofu. It's sort of blah,
Okay.
empty, and so on. You heard it here.
Yeah.
And God says, "Let there be light." And so the interesting thing is, God says what language? Of course, God said it in Hebrew. So God creates the universe with Hebrew words. So you can say like the Hebrew language is the DNA of the universe. This is just me having fun with it. In the opening chapter of Genesis, many things are called good. A few things are called very good. And some things are called good twice on the same day, on Tuesday, on the third day of creation, and that becomes a very good day for weddings in Jewish tradition because of that. But nothing is perfect, okay? And then in Genesis 1, 26, 27, God says, let us make man. The Hebrew is Adam, which probably is better translated as humanity. It is certainly not used as a proper name in this context. Let us make humanity in our image, after our likeness. And God created humanity in his image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. So in Genesis 26 and 27, humanity is created in God's image, male and female. Okay, everybody with me so far?
Yes.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
You know, Adam, the word dam is related to is the word blood, right? So
Yes.
there is a connection between Adam, blood, and dirt, also dust or dirt. Doesn't
Oh,
that
no. Okay, you're getting it right, but it's not the blood connection. The Hebrew word for earth is Adamah.
Adamah.
So the pun is sort of like God made the earthling from the earth, but neither one has anything to do with Dam, although we could have a great rabbinic time connecting it, but it's not certainly in the text.
Okay. Yeah, anyway, thank you.
Okay. So I think some of you may have heard me talk about this before. I believe that evolution is God's tool for creation. When God said, "Let us make humanity in our image," the traditional Jewish. So the question is, who is God talking to?
Right.
Almost everywhere in the text, God speaks in the first person singular. I am Adonai, your God, who led you out of Egypt to be your God. It's only in these creation stories that God speaks in the first person plural. So the question arises, who was God speaking to? And Christians have the easiest explanation. God was speaking to his triune self, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, no problem. Traditional Jewish explanation is God was speaking to the heavenly host, the angels, the seraphim, all of these creatures that inhabited the universe before creation. The answer I like, and I don't remember where I got this, is maybe God was talking to the rest of creation, like the animals. So God creates us in the divine image, but also in the image of animals. Let us, God says to the animals and the rest of creation, let us make humanity in our image. Our DNA is animal DNA. All right. There's very little difference between our DNA and, other primate DNA. So I like the idea that this is a biblical proof text for evolution. Les.
But animals hadn't been created yet, had they?
No. Well, yes, here they are, because this is on the sixth day of creation. Humanity. I'm glad you asked the question. This is Genesis 1:26. So we've already had 6 days of creation when everything else is created.
Oh,
And then
okay.
in the very culmination, God says, let us make humanity in our image. Yeah, I'm really glad you.
Rabbi,
So
I
humanity
think-
was the last creation then.
Yes, Julie.
when we're talking about let us, he also says let us do something back when he went to the Tower of Babel. He says let us.
Oh, that'd be something to check.
Things
So
like that.
yeah, so maybe just in the early text.
And to Isaiah, he said, who will go for us?
But
Oh, okay.
when
Okay, good.
God
Thank you.
says the image of our, said, like the kings that they say our instead of
Yeah,
me.
so one possibility is that he's speaking in the royal we, but as you point out, the kings always do that. But for example, in the Ten Commandments, God says, I am Adonai, Anochi Adonai Elohecha. I am Adonai, your God, who led you out of Egypt to be your God. So it's not consistent. Okay. Now we're going to move to the Garden of Eden. All of a sudden in Genesis 2, in the middle of verse 4, remember the verse numberings come much later. So in the middle of the verse, we are suddenly in the Garden of Eden. And there's no people, there's no plants. And every time the text refers to the deity, to God, it's always as Adonai Elohim, or often translated as Lord God. Yud He Vav He is actually God's name. And I always think of Elohim as Yud He Vav He's job. And then the rabbis go on to talk about Adonai represents God's aspect of mercy, and Elohim, which can also mean judge, represents God's aspect of judgment. So Adonai Elohim can talk about a moral balance within God that we find in the story. Then in verse 2:7, it says, Adonai, God, formed Adam from the dust of the earth, from the Adamah. He blew into his nostrils the breath of life, and the Adam became a living being. And this is the source of the Jewish tradition that human life begins with the first breath, which of course is different than other traditions where, notably many Christian traditions would say human life begins at conception. In Judaism, it begins as a breath, and then it ends with cessation of breathing. And then as we now have, techniques for monitoring brain waves, it gets more complicated, but that's basically the idea. God breathes into the man the breath of life, and he becomes a living neshama, which in biblical Hebrew means life, but in rabbinic Hebrew goes on to mean soul, less.
Doesn't, when he says he breathes, excuse my cat, breathes the breath of life, isn't that breathing? Don't we consider it being the soul being breathed into the human
So what I'm
being?
saying is, it says Adam became a living neshama.
Then what?
I can't remember if it's a neshama or nefesh. I would have to check the Hebrew. But in biblical Hebrew, that means life, and then it goes on to mean soul. So
then how do Christians, and Jim can maybe answer this one, how do Christians then believe that life begins with the union of the egg and the sperm if there's no soul involved?
Well, the Christians would not say that there was no soul involved.
They would say that
because there are Psalms where it said, I knew you from the moment of conception. And if God knew a person from the moment or before they were born, I can't remember the exact reference. A Christian interpretation of that is that life begins at conception. It's a religious disagreement, but there is backup for it. I mean, it's
But if they're
the
reading
Bible.
the
The
Torah,
Bible doesn't refer to souls at all.
okay, it just says become a living being, and he breathes the
Well,
breath of life.
it uses a word that we later go on to mean soul, but the word being nephesh, but the Bible doesn't address soul in the way we often talk about soul, namely that which survives after we die.
Rabbi?
Hold on a second, Paul.
Okay.
Yes, I'm going to ask sort of a crazy question. What was God thinking when he brought man to earth? What was he feeling? Was he?
You're going to ask me what was God thinking?
Yeah, what was he thinking? What was the reason for his creation?
I would say half the time, I don't know what I'm thinking when I do things. No, I have no idea what God was thinking.
Because
I mean,
was he lonely?
I can
was he
spec.
lonely and wanted
Oh, okay. So that's
companionship? Is that
yeah.
what he
So
wanted?
I talk about that a lot. Why did God, when we talk about creation of the universe, before creation, now I'm thinking of it in a Kabbalistic sense. Before creation, the universe was all God and only God. And
Yeah.
God decides to create a physical universe. So the question is, why does God decide to create a physical universe which can have men in it, which have people in it? Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So anybody want to address what you think? What was the
Yeah.
reason?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would like, there is a midrash that God is talking to the angels and tells them that, I want to create this person, and the angels are very much against it.
Yeah. I know the
Yeah.
midrash, but Erwin, answer the question: why does God create a physical universe?
Yeah. Why?
Anybody?
I've
Jim,
heard because he was lonely, is what I've
because
heard.
God was lonely. Okay, Jim.
Well, the same reason that we wanted to have kids and people want to have children.
Okay,
Whatever
and what's the reason for that?
That's why God wanted a universe so that he could have children.
What's the reason why we want to have kids?
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's it. That's the nitty-gritty. Why is it? What is it? The reason?
Okay, so let me without going
Okay,
into a long, without getting into psychoanalysis here, I'll give you some standard answers. One, I'm not crazy about. One is, if God is to be praised, we need people around to praise God. So God's got to create an adoring choir to praise God. I'm not crazy about that. I actually like, I think Les, you said that God was lonely. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. So the answer I really like is God likes stories.
That's good.
And so, okay. So that would be the two answers I would hazard. Okay, Paul, you can put your hand down if you're done. And Erwin, there is a midrash about God arguing with the angels about whether or not to create men, and the angels try and convince him not to do it, but he does it anyway.
Yeah.
And I want to continue with the story. Otherwise, this will go on for a month and not just a few seconds. Okay, there are two trees that are specifically mentioned in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden. And I'm just now quoting from the text. The Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground God made every tree grow that is pleasant to the sight. The tree of life was also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So, and we're going to see later, there's a reference to the tree of knowledge of good and evil is also in the midst of the garden. Okay, so this is just from the book of Genesis.
May I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
When God created Adam and Eve, or Adam, did he need to eat? I mean, because you're saying there's food there. Did he need to eat?
Well, he went in the Garden of Eden, he says, and we'll see it, he says, of the fruit of everything you can eat, but don't eat from the
No, I understand. Don't eat from those two. But
yeah.
I'm
So,
thinking when he created them.
the text, I would say the text is not clear on that.
Okay.
Okay, Rabbi.
Yeah.
How does Adam and Eve distinguish between the two trees?
Well, let's read the text. Apparently they can. Okay, so now we're getting to Genesis 2:16 and 17. And Adonai God commanded the Adam, the human, saying, of every tree of the garden you are free to eat, but as for the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you must not eat of it, for as soon as you eat of it, you shall die. And we don't have a record of Adam saying, we don't have Eve yet at all. We don't have Adam saying, how do I know which one is which? Apparently, he seems to know. And I just want to finish this slide, and I'll call on you, Jim. The text says literally, on the day you eat of it, you shall surely die, or you must die, yes, die, or dying you will die. The Hebrew is a unique form called the infinitive absolute. It's used because there's no punctuation in these texts to indicate emphasis. So it says, for those of you who may understand some Hebrew, me'etz hada'at tov v'ra, and from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, lo tochal mimenu, don't eat from it, ki bayom achalcha. You know the word yom, like Yom Kippur, and so on, and Yom Tov. On the bayom achalcha mimenu, on the day you eat of it, mot tamut. You have a repetition of the word mut, or mot. So it's dying you will die, or you will surely die. There's lots of ways to translate it into English. Jim.
Yeah, my translation says, from the tree you shall not eat. The moment you eat from it, you are surely doomed to die.
That's very interesting. Okay.
That's where
I'm just reading the simple reading of the Hebrew. The Hebrew is not complicated, and it says Bayom achalcha. Now, which the word yom means day. On the day you eat of it. I think you said on the moment you eat of it, and then it says you're doomed to die. And I would say already it's sort of getting sort of an interpretive reading, maybe a Christian reading. I don't know. It's an interpretive reading because it says mot tamut. The Hebrew is very simple.
Yep.
You will surely die. It doesn't say you're not doomed to. It doesn't go into. I'm not even sure how you would say it in Hebrew. My Hebrew isn't that good. But the English. I'm sorry. The Hebrew is actually quite simple, and I think straightforward to translate.
You're
less.
It says you will surely die, and you're saying the Hebrew says you will surely die, but it doesn't say you'll surely die that instant that you eat it. It just says
no. It says on the day. So we've got a 24-hour window.
On the day that you eat it, you will surely die. But on the day that you eat it, you'll surely die. That doesn't mean it could be in the future. I mean, how do you say?
I don't know. If I said, if a policeman said to you, on the day you receive this ticket, you need to show up in court, would you go into the court and saying, I didn't know you meant today. It could be in the future.
No, but he says you need to show up this day. This is, well, okay. You understand I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
No, what I would say, okay. So here's the issue, and it's going to come up all the time in this discussion. The Hebrew has a simple meaning called the pshat. Okay, that's interpretive meaning. Now we can interpret the text and we can read into the text. What I am focusing on is what does the text actually say? And if you want to interpret it more broadly, go for it. I'm all about doing that. I think it's fun and wonderful to do it. But the text says, on the day you eat of it, you will surely die.
But he doesn't die, and he eats of it, so the text is incorrect then.
Or God lied.
Or he died a different way.
How many ways do you know to die?
Well, they didn't know death, so what did it mean then? I mean,
the text, the Bible understands what death means.
Separation.
Okay? You can argue that in the context of this, Adam and Eve, or Adam here, there's no Chava yet. Adam is saying, he said, I'm going to die. What does it mean to die? Damn, I wish I had my Briggs Driver Brooks dictionary so I could look up what mot means.
Brown Driver and Briggs.
I'm sorry?
Brown Driver and Briggs, that's the one you
Right,
talked
Brown
about.
Drive, that's it. Yeah, I can't quite read it. It's on my shelf over there.
I'll have
I used
give
to have
mine.
no Hebrew dictionaries. Now I have an entire shelf of Hebrew dictionaries. But Adam had no Hebrew dictionaries. But the text, to my knowledge, never quibbles with this question that Adam and later Chava don't know what is meant by death. But people will often say, and as the translation that Jim pointed out, and I really should probably have Safaria open for this exercise, but I don't, that you can say that you'll be doomed to die, or death entered the world, or you had a spiritual death. I mean, you want to flexibly interpret Bible, you're in the right place. I love doing that, but I'm trying to understand exactly what the text says.
If
Rabbi Mike,
Yes, Julie.
Could it be possible that the breaking of fellowship, maybe with the shame that resulted and the breaking of fellowship, they didn't want to talk to God when he was trying to find him or to say, where are you? That maybe that in a sense is some kind of a death.
I would say that's stretching the meaning of the word death. You could say our friendship died, our fellowship died, but Adam is God is only talking to Adam here and says, on the day you eat of it, you will die, yes, die.
That's it.
Or you will die is probably the closest I can come to literally translate it. Less.
There's an expression now, you talk to your son, you say, if you do that, you're dead to me.
Yes.
And that means that he's dead to him, but he's not dead. Could that be a possible translation of that?
I would say that's a possible interpretation. I would not call it a good translation. If I said to my son, if you take the keys to the car and move the car, you are dead. Okay? You will surely die. Now that could raise a question of whether I have issued a threat. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just looking at what the text says. Jim.
Yeah, our friend Father Dave, what he said is that the Garden of Eden originally was meant that nobody would ever die. Death, you live forever. But if you eat of this and you gain this knowledge of good and evil, then you die. So I'm kind of with Les. On the day of you eat of it.
So we actually don't know whether death was contemplated in the Garden of Eden. There's actually an interesting hint. What if they would have eaten from the tree of life? Would they live forever?
Possible.
And in fact, we'll see that when we answer the question, why were they expelled? Because God says, now that they know good and evil, and we'll see it really means a lot more than just good and evil. Now that they know stuff, they're going to realize they ate from the wrong tree. They're going to eat from the tree of life and live forever. They can't do that, so I'm going to expel them from the garden.
Rabbi?
Yes.
I think this is an empty threat from God. Number one, because if these two of them gonna die, who gonna carry on humanity? And God has to.
First of all, there's only one now. Well, and if God can make one, God can't make another one. And I'm also going to ask you, Erwin, does God make empty threats?
Yes.
Okay, good. I like that admission.
And the second one, because they eat from the tree of knowledge, they probably can figure out, this is poison, but we're not going to live because we have an antidote.
Okay. The antidote is
eating from the tree of life.
Right. And God kicks them out before they can do that. We're going to see it. We're going to read the text carefully. We will definitely not finish tonight. Suzanne.
So, I mean, to me, it's always been interesting that God builds death into it. I mean, it's like one of the first things he says is, but we do have to assume the animals are not eating each other. I mean, are they?
Well, so far, we don't actually know how long we are into the story from the creation of animals to this moment. We don't know whether the animals are eating each other. The text just doesn't discuss it. And we also don't know whether the animals are dropping dead from other diseases. We simply don't know that.
Yeah.
So the text just doesn't deal with that. But one of the big questions we are going to deal with, which you're hinting at, is why is death introduced in the story, and
Yeah.
what's the overriding purpose of this story? And I would say there's a very different answer in Christianity than in Judaism, which is why I love teaching it particularly to Christians. Just to point out that the reasons behind the story are a matter of interpretation. The story says one thing, now we have to deal with it. And that's what we're doing right now. And
When God said to Adam that you will surely die, were the animals living, not dying at that time, or was that a death
well,
sentence?
in the first chapter, which is probably a different tradition, all the animals are made, but actually, yeah, I should go back to the text, because I actually just plain don't remember. Hang on, I'm going to grab a Torah.
Did
Hang
the
on.
animals live forever? And then when Adam ate the apple of, good
Because
meat,
next time, whoops, sorry. Next time I will have Safaria open, but so I can do this more quickly. But as chapter 2 opens, it says there was no shrub in the field, no grasses. God had not sent rain upon the earth, and there was no man to till the soil. And then God formed man and blew into his nostrils the breath of life. And then it talks about God causing food to grow, and we read about that. And it talked about different rivers, and God placed the man in the Garden of Eden and said, of every tree you can eat, but not the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because as soon as you eat of it, you will die. And then the next thing we're going to see is God makes the woman. There's no reference in chapter 2 here of God making the other animals. So here is what I would say is the story is not interested in that question. It's sort of like the question, just jumping ahead, Adam and Chava have 2 children, Cain and Abel, right? Cain murders Abel. And then a little later, we read that Cain knew his wife.
Where did she come from?
Where did she come from? And I think the truest answer is the Bible's just not interested in that story. And I don't take the text literally. I mean, I treat it very seriously, as we're doing tonight. But the Bible simply is not interested in that question. In this chapter 2 of Genesis, the Bible isn't interested in knowing whether fleas were on Adam's, skin and Adam swatted it, whether Adam had white blood cells which were killing bacteria in his bloodstream. The text is simply just not interested in that question. Okay, and I'm going to mute. Okay, so let's see. I want to move on.
Rabbi,
yeah,
I have one more question.
I bet you have more than one more question.
Okay, it's not in the Torah, but what I read is the snake is an animal who was punished to crawl on the ground.
That's in the Torah.
Okay, so why is the snake? What did the snake do?
Yet. Hold on. We haven't gotten to the snake yet. So let's hold that question until we read about the snake. Okay? I'm not going to answer every question about the text. Let's wait till we get to that place in the text.
Rabbi, the question I have is, why did God plant the tree of good and evil and the plant for life?
Okay.
What is
great question. That's a critical question. I suggest it has, Jim, something to do with entrapment, but we're going to get there. Okay. I think Jim is going to have me excommunicated.
His priest is going to put a spell on you.
Okay, so we talked about you will surely die. So let's talk about the name of the tree. the name of the tree is Etz Hada'at Tov V'Ra, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And in the Bible, in a couple of different places, these places, this phrase knowledge of good and evil is a merism. Merism is an English word which means an encompassing phrase. So if I invite you to dinner at my home and I said we're going to have everything from soup to nuts, you would guess we're going to have things other than a bowl of soup and a plate full of nuts, right?
Yes.
So in other places, knowledge of good and evil means knowledge of everything. Okay, I'm just saying it's not just, it may not simply be just good and evil, but it may be many things. Somebody mentioned, I think it was Cheryl, when somebody said it was an apple, the text doesn't tell us what the nature of the fruit is. The rabbis say it was a fig, since Adam and Eve quickly cover themselves with fig leaves. And so where did it become, how did it become an apple? And it became an apple in the 4th century translation called the Vulgate, the first Christian translation into Latin, where Saint Jerome wants to press an assonance, a similar sound between the Latin words for wrongdoing and apple, malum and malus. So just in case we're wondering whether the apple was a good thing or a bad thing, the fruit was a good thing or a bad thing, Saint Jerome calls it an apple, malus, because it's similar to the word malum. Okay.
And apples may not have grown at that time in that part of the world.
Yeah. So, and we're not even going there because
we don't care.
Right. And apparently neither did Jerome. Okay. So now we're going to, I love this picture of Adam and Chava looking for someone and a giraffe. And I don't think giraffes were growing in that part of the world either. So I'm just going to read from Genesis chapter 2, verse 18 to 25. And Adonai God said, "It is not good for the man that the man should be alone. I will make for him a help or fitting helper or helpmate, or even helpmeet in one ancient translation for him. And out of the ground," oh, here we get the creation of the other animals. "And out of the ground, Adonai God formed every beast of the field and every bird of the air and brought them to Adam to see what he would call them. And whatever Adam called every living creature, that was its name. And Adam gave names to all the cattle and the birds of the air and to every beast of the field. But for Adam, no fitting helper was found." I don't remember if I covered this in a slide. So what's the purpose of Adam's Ezer Kenegdo or helpmate or helpmeet? Why does Adam need someone else?
Because
It's not.
Don't be shy.
He's so happy being alone.
He doesn't want to be alone. But he's got the
to make
animal.
more other humans.
So he wants to have sex, right? God wants Adam to have someone to be intimate with, right?
Well, no,
So-
it says it's not good for man to be alone. That's why he
Right.
made him.
Right,
Anything else is subjective.
right. But in the opening of chapter 1 of Genesis, all the animals are made male and female. And here we just have the man. So I just want to point out, Rashi suggests that that Adam had the choice of what his mate should be, and here is contemplating and rejecting bestiality. This is not an original perverted idea of your rabbi. It's the original and maybe perverted idea of a rabbi 1,000 years ago. But the interesting thing is when we think about the question of should people be allowed to choose who they love, and of course here I'm thinking about homosexuality. Should people be allowed to choose who they love? Well, I go back to Genesis, and Adam doesn't find a fitting helper, so he gets to choose. He says, "No, I need something else." So Adonai, God, made Adam fall into a deep sleep, and he slept, and he took from one of his ribs, the Hebrew word is tselah, and closed up the flesh beneath it. And the rib which Adonai God had taken from the man made he a woman and brought her to the man. And Adam said, "Now this is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. And the Hebrew works very similar to the way the English works. So we have man and woman. In Hebrew, we have ish and isha. So very similar words. Therefore shall a man leave his father and mother, and he shall cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. So originally they've been one flesh, and they've been trying to get together, men and women, ever since, to become one flesh again. And they were both naked, the man and the wife, and they were not ashamed. Okay, so I've just read text now. I should have the Hebrew available. I will next time we get into this.
But in chapter 1, it says he made them male and
Right.
female.
Because in chapter 1 seems to be a completely separate story.
Yeah.
Okay.
The name of God, or the reference to God, is different, Elohim. And chapter 2, it's Adonai Elohim. And so it seems like, so there's a very interesting question in terms of biblical structure. Why have two stories that say basically, that cover the same material, and they're sort of covering the material from a different perspective?
Isn't
And
that
also,
where they get the story of this first woman who is sort of sent away?
Lilith.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have a male and female at the end of chapter 1, and at the beginning of chapter 2. I don't think I cover it in this story. In the beginning of chapter 2, what happened to the woman? And one answer is a midrash, that the first woman was Lilith, and she was too darn uppity. And specifically, the story is she wanted to have sex on top of Adam rather than being in an inferior role. And Adam couldn't tolerate that, so he sent her away. And if you get into some of the medieval midrashes about Lilith, she steals semen from men in their nocturnal ejaculations and makes devils and demons from them. So I actually have a separate teaching on Lilith. Lilith is a fascinating story in itself. We're going to see another interpretation about what happened to the woman. Okay, so we have the text, and now we're going to get into more of the text. The role of the woman. The first thing that God says is not good is loneliness. It's not good for a person to be alone. So God says the man needs an ezer kenegdo, which is variously translated, as you see here, helpmate, helpmeet, which is actually an archaic word in the time of King James. They actually think the translator in the time of King James invented the word helpmeet, fitting helper, and so on, all of which sounds vaguely demeaning to the woman and the role of the woman. But Ezer, the word Ezer can't be demeaning, because God is called in Ezer. In I think it's the 80th Psalm, it says, I lift my eyes to the mountain. Oh, from where will my help come? My help is from Adonai. And says, may I in Yavo Ezri, from where will come my Ezer? My Ezer is God. So the Ezer can't be demeaning. And the word keneged in Hebrew has this sense of scales of balance. So I believe the term ezer kenegdo means the man needs another agent to help by being a balance. And in fact, there's some really interesting things that the ayin, anybody know what the sound of an ayin is in Hebrew?
It has no sound, right?
Has no sound. It's actually guttural. It's like, okay, so you've heard of Gaza, right? There isn't a person here that hasn't heard of Gaza.
Mhm.
But if you're in Israel, it's called Aza, because it begins with an ayin. And there's speculation that at one time, ayin would take a dagesh and make it a G sound, which is why it's, I think and I can't remember if it's in the Septuagint or in the Vulgate that it has the G sound. But, and then the speculation in a scholarly work that a ezer with a ayin pronounced as G means powerful helper. But the woman helps by being in a balance and by being opposed to the man. The woman helps by being a balance, a supportive opposite. The phrase can even mean powerful counterpart. And so in the spirit, I named my rabbinic thesis Ezer Kenegdo, toward a theology of Jewish-Christian partnership. Jews and Christians help each other, not by one being superior or inferior, but by being, in tension and in balance, and make us question what we do. Paul.
I may be thinking some craziness here, but this is what I want to say. Today I watched a very special program on the creation of the universe. And I saw that it's billions of years old.
13.8 billion.
Yeah, billions of years old. And our little universe, our little Earth and the planets that go out are just a little part of that. And my thinking is that God waited for billions of years to see the universe created, but he needed a little spot of his own to make something good out of. And he created our planets. He was a person who created everything that we see around us. And how is he going to do this is the story of the Bible. That's what I think.
That's an interesting take. As a scientist, I would say the Bible certainly is not aware of the 13.8 billion years. It's not aware of the number of stars.
No.
But I think it's a very interesting take.
Yeah.
Let's just go on a little bit. So here's the question: who was that woman? In the Garden of Eden, the characters are Adam and Chava. The word Chava is related to the word Chai. It's a chet and a vav, and the vav can be a yud. Don't ask me; it's Hebrew grammar. It can change and switch. So how did Chava become Eve? And the answer is, in the Jewish translation into Greek, we had a problem because the Greeks didn't have a guttural chet. So what they did was they just dropped it. And so for Chava, they just took out the and they left Eva, and Eva became Eve. So that's why we have Adam and Eve, and in most translations, and not Adam and Chava. Okay, so it says in Genesis 2:25, and they were both naked, the man and the woman, and they were not ashamed. So what other beings are naked and not ashamed?
All the animals.
The animals.
The animals. What other beings are naked and not ashamed?
I don't think God has clothes on.
Angels?
How about other humans? Are there any humans that are naked and not ashamed?
Yeah, babies.
Children.
Babies.
Babies.
And animals. Okay.
Yeah.
So it says before they ate from the tree of knowledge, they were naked and not ashamed. And of course, I raised the question. And if I didn't think that it was an interesting question, could this be a key message in our story? Okay, so I think we'll take this up as the last thing. I'm going to grab one thing I forgot to get before. I think I know where it is. Hang on. Okay, we're going to talk about the surgery. So it said, and Adonai God made Adam fall into a deep sleep, and he slept, and he took from one of his tsela, sometimes translated as rib, often translated as rib, and closed up the flesh. So the question is, what is a tsela? It certainly could be a rib, as in the familiar translation. It can also mean side. And we see it in other places in the Bible where a tsela can mean a different side. So one interpretation is that in the first chapter of Genesis, God making male and female, God making the Adam, the human, male and female, was that he was like the Adam was like a Siamese twin and male and female, either connected like this or connected back to back. There's all kinds of rabbinic discussions about this. And so if you interpret tsela as his side, made from his side, the woman, this makes sense. The familiar picture here is that it was from Adam's rib. Okay, everybody with me? So here's another fascinating idea. I'm not claiming this is true, but it's a fascinating idea. I mentioned this guy, Zioni Zevit. He is an Israeli scholar He lives in the United States. He wrote a book called What Really Happened in the Garden of Eden. And he points out some things. The Israelites knew human and animal skeletal structure. They knew it from ossuaries. We talked about this, I think, in burial in ancient Israel. The way people were buried in ancient Israel is there were graves, and the graves were sealed with a rock, and they would lay the person out in the grave, and they would come back like a year later or more when the flesh had decomposed, and there were just bones, and they would put the bones in the back of the grave. And some suggest that the phrase, he was gathered unto his fathers or gathered unto his kin, as a euphemism for death, comes with this form of burial. The point is, the Israelites, for whom the story is written, understood human anatomy, and they understood animal anatomy. If we say that the man was made from if the woman was made from one of Adam's ribs, we would expect to find that men have one fewer rib than do women, right? And they don't. And the Israelites knew this. And they also knew something about animal physiology and animal skeletal structure. So they knew that human males and females had the same number of ribs and other bones. So here's a question. I don't know if you know the answer to this. It's an obscure question. So is there a bone which male animals, particularly primates, male primates have, that females don't have, or male mammals, and which the human male doesn't have?
Yes,
Phallus bone.
yes, there is.
The phallus bone.
The phallus bone, yeah.
The
That's
os
what we even.
penis. It's
The
the
os
os penis.
penis. Yes, you guys are
Yeah.
good.
The phallus bone.
So this is the baculum or the os penis. And I know in my recording, it won't show my camera image, so I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And I want to show you, this is my penis bone.
Well,
It didn't come from my penis, but I do own it, and therefore it is my penis bone. And somebody who attended one of these lectures sent it to me. Apparently on eBay or maybe even Amazon, you can buy one of these and wear it around your neck as a little bit of jewelry, which I would suggest is a conversation starter and perhaps a conversation stopper. I used to give this talk. Well, I give this talk a lot. And once I gave it to a group of Catholic deacons and their wives in training. And I got to this point in the talk, and I took out my little penis bone, and I went over to a woman. I said, "This is my penis bone. Would you like to see it?" And she completely freaked out. So I learned you never hand this to a woman with that particular language. I will sometimes hand it to a man, but I'm more cautious about it. Let me get back to the back to the presentation about the baculum or the os penis. Most male mammals have a penis bone, which is called the baculum or the os penis. This bone is absent in humans and spider monkeys. And here's an image with the whale, a mink, a fox, a coyote, a mouse. I think this is from a raccoon, if I'm not mistaken, or a possum or something. I don't know. The bone is absent. Okay. The phrase there's a phrase that I can go back. Oops, I need to click on here. It says, the text actually says, well, I shouldn't even go back. Yeah. The text says the flesh was closed up at the site after the surgery. But what the text actually says, the phrase closed up at the spot, it's literally beneath it. Vayisgor basar tachtena. You may know the word tachat. It leads to the word tuchas, which means bottom or underneath. The word tachat simply means underneath. So the text says literally, the flesh on the man was closed up beneath the spot of the surgery. It may refer to the perineal raft or seam scar under the male scrotum. I am not going to do a show and tell on that particular part of a male's anatomy, but it looks like that's where the surgery occurred. So according to Zioni Zevit, the bone may well have been the os penis, and that's why men don't have that bone, but other animals do have it. There's actually interesting speculation about why animals have it. I would say it's beyond the scope of the story. And I will also add that I don't think this point is particularly important, but it is so interesting and delightful that I can't resist including it. Let's see, we're a little after 8. Yeah, so we're going to get to the serpent next time. So let me stop the share.
Yeah.
So anyway, here is a image of a dog. I think it's a dog, probably. Yes. And there's the penis bone on the dog. Okay. So things you learn in Torah study, huh? Okay. So let me stop sharing and just ask if anybody, so where somebody posted something on chat. Oh, okay. No, that was somebody leaves. So any questions, closing comments? We will pick this up with the story of the serpent next time. Serpent has a super interesting role, as you know, in the text. And as we explore the Garden of Eden with your Jewish tour guide, and we really, we've gotten a little bit of reading in the Hebrew where it makes a difference. It's kind of fun to keep track of it. When we read it in the Hebrew, it says, on the day you eat of it, you will surely die. In the Hebrew, it says the flesh is closed up underneath it. That's kind of interesting. Knowledge of good and evil may mean more than just knowledge of those two things. It may mean knowledge in general. And we're going to see as we go on in this story, there are many other places where the Hebrew sheds light on the meaning of the text. And, you know, one of my themes is when you translate, you certainly introduce specific meanings or other meanings of the text. So, Jim.
Did I just hear that Adam did not have a gender?
No, you didn't hear that. What you heard is, so Jim, let me ask a personal question. Do you have a penis bone?
No.
No, neither do I. Well, I do, but it's in this little box. For about $8.95 on eBay, you can have your own penis bone. There's a phrase you wouldn't expect to hear
There's
from
a
a
penis
rabbi.
museum in Iceland.
There's a what museum?
A penis museum in Iceland. Reykjavik.
Okay. That still hasn't convinced me to go to Iceland, but so everything is gendered in Hebrew, and Adam is clearly gendered. What the text is suggesting is, what the text is asking is, what was the bone that God made the woman from? We usually hear rib.
Yeah.
But if you take the word rib literally, it raises some questions. Namely, do men and women have the same number of ribs? Yes. When it says it closed up the flesh beneath it, what does it mean beneath the rib? So there's some interesting things. Zioni Zevit points out, if the first man had a baculum and God made the woman from the baculum, that would answer the question of why human males don't have baculums, where most other human mammals do. Because, I mean, it's a lot in the Bible is the story of origins. Why are snakes creepy? We're gonna, find that out here. Why do we hate the Amalekites and so on? So it's a story of origins, and this story, clearly, the Garden of Eden story, is a story of origins. And what Zioni Zevit is pointing out is one really good possibility is that it may have been the baculum. I don't think it changes the story at all. It's just too interesting for me to skip over. Les.
And that's where the seed comes from, where semen comes through the penis. So that would kind of make creation a little bit more interesting, don't you think? I mean, that's where the man's semen comes through.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with?
You're saying that God made Eve out of this bone.
Yeah.
And all I'm saying is that that's the bone. If we, when it was in the male, that would have been causing the egg to be fertilized.
Well,
So,
no, we seem to be doing that quite well without the bone.
no, but I'm just saying, he's saying that that would be
Yeah,
another
you could say it's
argument.
from the organ
yeah,
from the
yeah.
organ of fertilization and creation, and I kind of like that association. But the bone, the interesting question is why do mammals have penis bones? And I haven't researched that in a couple of years, but one suggestion is to prolong intercourse between mammals, which prevents the female from being impregnated by other mammals, and not the one who is actually impregnating her. That's a speculation, but it's not at all clear why, spider monkeys and whales and dogs and other mammals have penis bones. So it's an interesting question. I would say, Les, you're a veterinarian. Well, why do dogs have penis bones?
Well, they keep us busy because when they get stones, they plug up and we have to amputate that area and redirect the urethra. So
Yeah,
I've
but
done
that has
many of
nothing
those.
to do with the bone, right? I mean, that's
Oh, yeah, no. The os penis has a certain diameter. And if a dog gets bladder stones and they try to come through, they'll block up and they can't pass through the
Oh,
penis.
okay. So it
Because
tends to
so what
block.
we have to
Okay.
do is amputate that whole area and reroute the urethra underneath the anal area. Make
Well,
it
now
like
I have to say a
femoral-
blessing in the morning, thanking God for not making me
Oh, yeah, we
a
wouldn't want
dog.
that. If we get stones, we'd have trouble.
Yeah. I mean, okay. Any other fascinating questions? But clearly the best is yet to come. The role of the serpent, this whole question of why God made the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Mm.
Is there entrapment in the story? And who is the entrapper? That's a whole other interesting question. So anyway, the story is really interesting. I'm delighted, to teach it in a way, or to review it in a way where I don't feel rushed at all and feel like I have to, finish it. We will be discussing this for several sessions.
Next Monday?
Next Monday, yes. I
And
think
what's
the
gonna be
Monday
Wednesday?
after that, I think I'm going to be traveling, but we'll have to.
And what's Wednesday night?
This coming Wednesday,
You know, offhand?
this coming question, we're gonna address the question: what do the dead know?
That's what okay. Sounds great.
And there's some stories there's a very interesting passage in the Talmud about that. Okay, so we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you
Okay,
so much.
and before then, I
Thank
think
you.
you should all go online and buy your own penis bones.
Good night, Rabbi. If I tell him
Only
my
one
rabbi
for
told me
Rabbi.
to buy this, right?
Yes. See if you get a rabbinic discount.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care.